Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Olivia, and we're so glad you're here today.
Hello there, sister.
Hello, how are you?
I am very good.
She is very good.
We have to figure out what we're going to eat for lunch after this. It's 11:54 a.m. I feel like we've run a marathon already this morning.
This week has been nuts. This week
has been nuts, but this morning in particular, and I don't really leave.
What do we do? I don't even know what we did.
I have no idea what we did.
We've been recording podcast stuff for a long time. The podcast, by the way, has charted in highly charted. We're very proud. And much of this success is due to the fact that we have a huge, amazing support system around us. Mm-hmm. Led the band leader, I will call her
the band leader,
our Barbara Streisand.
Yes.
Our personal Barbara Streisand is named Miss Beth Booker. And she is a one-of-a-kind soul.
I love her so much.
We love her so much. And
it's, I didn't know. We talked to other publicists and stuff like that. Like, we've sort of been having this conversation for a while before we hired Beth of what do we need and how do we need it. And, we started having that conversation early on and talking to people, interviewing people. And then we talked to Beth, and I say this in the episode, but Olivia said, like, I know her. I think she's great, but like, you kind of have to vibe with her too. And it was immediate. And she is just the right. First of all, she completely believes in us, which is the most important thing. But I didn't know what having a publicist would be like. I'm now trying to convince Beth to go on all my phone calls with me, like all of them, like to the doctor and everything. I'm
going to say, not to be dramatic, but she is the wind beneath our wings.
She is the wind beneath our wings. And you personally, also, I have to say this, because I said this to him last night. Thomas is the wind beneath my wings.
Sorry.
But Beth is it's like, she's like top 4. Like, it's like you, me,
nobody
loves
us like Beth loves us.
Like, no, Beth is like top 4. And she ranks alongside my fiance.
And I will say this, like, from a business perspective, like if we just like roll it back for a second, right? Like we stumbled into a startup. We did not really know what we were doing, right? We had a social media agency that was thriving. We did 6 figures. We were very, very, very global, right?
Yep.
That was one thing, right? But then we launched this thing. We had no idea what we were doing. No. We stumbled into this. People came crawling from all the corners, press, all this stuff started happening to us. We had no idea what we were doing. And we did. So early on, we were like, we do need a publicist. We didn't know what that would look like. I've worked with publicists in different ways for 10 years, but I didn't know what that would look like. And I just want to say to anybody listening who might need a publicist, first of all, Beth offers publicists can be very expensive, right?
Yeah.
So people often think, how could I afford that? I can't get a publicist. Beth offers packages for very good price. Also, if you are an expert, you can come on to
Beth has done a very good job of taking what it means to be a publicist and breaking it down into little pieces so that if you can't afford, we have her on monthly retainer, but if you can't afford that, you can get what she calls reactive pitching, which is I'm not going to explain it. We'll link to that. And then also she does consults, so you can pay for an hour or 2 hours of her time to learn how to do this yourself. And this is in line with what we do, which is making things accessible to everybody.
Right. And I also want to say, though, but from a business perspective, it's so important to hire people that just believe in you.
Yeah.
Just believe in you and get your vibe. Like, we text with her all day long. She believes in us. We have so many big projects going on that I can't even count them, that are like pie in the sky projects. Yeah. And every time we tell her a new project, she's like ready to go.
To that point too, we had Olivia and I don't know. We know what we're doing when it comes to creating this community. Right. We really know what we're doing. When it comes to taxes, not so much. When it comes to a corporation, not at all. So we really had no choice because we didn't go to business school. We don't have those connections. We reached out to our network of women. Olivia reached out to Hitha and said, do you know lawyers? And Hitha said, yeah, I know this amazing law firm called Johnson and Ocean. And we now have Maggie, who's our lawyer, and she's the best. And she checks in on us and makes sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And we called back in my girl, Jen.
Yeah,
who used to do our books.
She was our bookkeeper.
And she's a financial controller for other companies, but she used to keep our books just as like a favor to us, basically. And she's helping me with taxes because I don't know. Any of this
and again, like we, support the supporters. Like right.
Yeah. And so Olivia had connected with Beth on Twitter a long time ago, and Beth always believed in us. So we have filled our circle with people that believe in us and support us and are really good at what they do, because I'm really good at what I do. And
but we can't do everything. We can't do everything.
I didn't go to law school. That's for sure.
So Beth Booker is probably the cutest human. If I was into women, I would marry Beth. But I mean, I love Beth.
Well, and I have good news for you. Beth would marry, you fall into the category.
We get into that on the episode.
It's all about that. It's all about stepping into your truth and living your truth.
And no rules, that there are no rules, right? Just the pursuit of joy. But Beth is truly such a compassionate person and always thinking about other people, and such an amazing mom. And it just was a beautiful episode about, finding yourself and just truly
taking your talents and putting them towards something good. You want to talk about, you can't do everything. The things that you can do, how are you going to do them and make the world a better place?
She talks about that. Yeah, she talked about that. So enjoy the conversation with Beth. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to A Fresh Story so that we can keep telling fresh start stories. Beth Booker is the founder and CEO of Gracie PR, a boutique lifestyle public relations company in Naples, Florida. When she's not pitching her heart out or trying to help her community in Southwest Florida get back on its feet post-hurricane, she can be found chasing her 2 kids, snuggling with her 3 dogs, reading, or at the beach. And I'm super excited to have Beth here today. I've been Twitter friends with Beth for years, and we've kind of ran circles around, I'm going to say danced around each other for a long time. Yeah. And then when it came time to us to level up in the company, we needed a publicist. I immediately said to Jenny, we got to get Beth on board. And Beth has quickly become our 3rd musketeer in the team here. And we truly cannot imagine running the company without her at this point. We probably talk to Beth more than we talk to each other now. So we are more than thrilled to have her here today. And she has some interesting stories to tell. So hello, my dear Beth.
Hello. I can't believe I'm the guest on your podcast.
We're excited.
As your publicist, we're flipping the script here almost a little bit. So
we are
happy to be here.
It's good. I think it gives you like the insider view of what we, you can sort of get inside.
It's like that show when the boss comes in, Undercover Boss.
Undercover Boss.
We
didn't even recognize you today.
No. I know. Yeah, it's that mustache I'm wearing right now.
Yeah, know? And the big eyeglasses. I had no idea I've never had a publicist before. I would have liked to. I think it sounds like a great thing to have your whole life, but I had no idea the relationship that you have. And, Olivia had contacted, I was overseas, and Olivia said, hey, check this person out. I think we need PR help. Like, what do you think? And she was like, you can totally say no. It's all got to be sort of good vibes. And we talked to you, and I was like, absolutely. Like, this is the person that we need to work with. And the way that you support us and our vision and have helped us sort of like get to the next level. I remember telling you our idea that we had like a year ago about what we were going to do for an activation with our engagement rings, and just being like, wow, that feels so small now compared to what we're doing with you, and compared to like the projects that we're going after. So it's the coolest relationship that I've ever like sort of gotten to endeavor in, and we're really glad to be in it with you.
Oh, guys. Oh my God. I've got the warm and fuzzies. Thank you. Well, it's wonderful to work with clients like you who are doing really cool shit. So
yeah, it's very.
We're your favorite clients, Beth. You can just admit it.
That's our real.
I legally
She's a publicist.
say that.
I always laugh at Olivia. I'm like, It's not about being like getting things done. It's that I need to be our lawyer's favorite client. I need to be the best client that our lawyer has. I need to be our publicist's favorite client. It's like a teacher's pet thing that I have.
We both have that.
Anyway, so why don't you, Beth, I'm fascinated. We're so excited to just like get you trapped here for an hour. Why don't you take us back to the beginning of your Fresh Start story?
So it's kind of interesting because like I feel like my whole life has kind of had all these really big fresh starts, but the one that I talk about the most, which if you follow me on social media, you know I like to talk about myself a lot. I have a Leo moon. I cannot help it. But the big thing is that I came out whenever I was 30 years old, and it was really a lot to process at the time. It was in the middle of like June of the pandemic in 2020. It was, you know, obviously like a lot of just scary, uncertain stuff happening in the world. And I think it made a lot of people really look introspectively at like who they are and what they want and how they see themselves in the world. And, you know, even with like what you do at Fresh Starts, you know, like a lot of people realize that like maybe the partners that they chose aren't serving them anymore. And so I think that, you know, depending like, or whoever you are, you probably had some realization that came from that time. But basically what had happened was I was kind of mulling it over for a while, and, you know, all the TikTok lesbians really don't help. No, I'm kidding. But I basically was like starting to see a lot of content with people who were like married to a man with children, like me, who were like, oh, I've just realized that like I'm bisexual, I'm pan, I'm queer, I'm, you know, however you identify. And then I kind of started thinking about it, and I was like, oh shit. You know, it was like this, all of a sudden, like all these puzzle pieces come together where like you start like, you get this flashback of your whole life up to this point and where that actually was very apparent, but you never realized it. And I think that a lot of that is just from like, you know, compet, like, you know, it's that.
Can you define compet for our audience that might not know what that is?
So compet is,
I thought Olivia might not know.
Compet is like the idea of like heterosexuality is the norm.
Yeah.
And that is what is like wildly kind of at the forefront of our culture at all times. So it kind of puts that idea in your head that like, you know, oh, well, you know, that boy at school is picking on you. He must have a crush on you, because boys pick on girls when they have a crush on them or whatever. And it kind of gets ingrained in you over the years, and you eventually, you know, then you're in college and, you know, you're like, oh, wow, like I'm going to be graduating college soon. I need to find a husband. Like, what? So
what is the word? Compulsory heterosexuality. Oh, okay. So it's just, it's that like everybody's kind of assumed straight until proven gay. Yeah. So instead of really having an interrogating yourself and being like, what do I like? What do I not like? You're like, I'm a girl. I guess I like boys, move forward in that direction.
Exactly. And like, that's actually something that I've really tried to squash with my own kids, like with raising them, is like not, and I'm in Florida, so this is like super fun. But you know, it's that idea of like, I have never once been like outwardly, do you have a crush on a boy or a girl at school? It's always like, hey, like, do you have a crush on anyone, boy, girl, anybody, however they identify, like anything like that. And that's just kind of the thing, is like, I want like my kids to know that like from the start, you have options and you are accepted and you are loved, and like everything that you want out of life, I'm here to support you 100%. And it's not to say that my parents didn't do that or wouldn't have done that for me, but I grew up in a suburb outside of Pittsburgh. It's called Beaver, Pennsylvania. And I, you know, it was like the quintessential perfect little small town. It was like you know, we had like the main street where it's like, you know, all these little shops, like it looks like a Hallmark movie, basically, where I grew up. And that was just kind of like it. I mean, there were maybe like 1 to 2 people I remember being in high school with who were, you know, openly queer or gay. And I mean, that was in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah. You're 2 years younger than me, right?
Yeah. So it was like very, I don't know, it was just a very interesting realization to have about myself. And so then I kind of started to like think about what that really meant for me. And this kind of all started like a few months before I officially had come out to my husband, which was a super fun experience. For the listeners, to clarify, like when I came out as queer, which basically is kind of like if you're a fan of, you know, Schitt's Creek, it's like the whole line where it's like, you know, I like the wine, not the label. You know, I'm honestly just kind of a lover of all. And I don't know. I mean, I kind of bounce back and forth. I feel like there's a lot of queer people out there who probably can relate to this, where you're like, am I bi? Am I pan? Am I queer? Am I fully gay? Am I actually straight? And maybe I'm just like, and you like start gaslighting yourself.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I just use the term queer, because I'm just like, you know what? It just kind of like bundles them all up into one little package, and then you can just kind of like guess. Because I don't really owe you an explanation. But yeah, so I had come out to my husband. He was extremely supportive in that moment, obviously very like taken aback, because I did it in the way where instead of just like having like this actual plan of like sitting him down and talking to him, I just like word vomited everywhere. And you know, he was supportive and told me, you know, that he kind of always assumed that about me. Then I was absolutely horrified to find out that when I told my best friends, they also assumed that about me. And I was like, okay, so here's the thing. My husband knew. My best friends, Kayla and Bree, this is you. Okay.
Calling you out.
Like, I always thought that, you know? And I'm like, okay, well, you've known me for like, at that point, it was like 10 years. I'm like, so you couldn't have just told me? I don't know. I mean, like that would have been super helpful to know when I was 20 years old.
I imagine they thought you knew.
Yeah. I mean, obviously.
What did that feel like it meant for your marriage?
That's a great question. And at the time, I was extremely conflicted. I wasn't sure, you know, if it was a thing where I needed to be able to like go and experience this part of my life that I felt that I had missed out on is not really the best term, but just like this part of my life that I kind of wish I would have been able to experience fully. But at the same time, I think that it's important to fully understand yourself and fully love yourself in every relationship you have, and especially in a marriage. And that meant that I wanted to make sure that I was living as authentically as possible and as unapologetically as possible, because there's like really nothing wrong with being who you are. And I think that's something that's interesting, is that I had a ton of like people. It's wild whenever you do something like come out that, you know, people feel the need to like really ask invasive questions about it. And I'm like, wow, I'm like, let me ask you about your marriage. Haven't seen any family photos in a while there.
It happens with divorce too. It happens with divorce too.
Yeah. And it's like, they're like, oh, like, does this mean you're getting a divorce? Does this mean you're, you know, are you going to be like polyamorous now? And I'm like, you know, it's like all these like questions. And then of course I also had people, and this is actually like a common one that is extremely hurtful. It's like, okay, but like you're married to a man, so like why even bother sharing it in the first place? And to that I say, representation matters. It matters. Like, I have a very dear friend of mine who actually recently just came out. But she had come to me after being married to a man and told me, I think that, I'm also queer, and you doing that and being so open about it is a big part of like what made me feel like this is something I can accept and love about myself. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, that's important, because there's nothing worse than going through something like this big self-realization and feeling like you have no one who's going to understand or relate to you. And that's pretty much why I'm an open book.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's funny because I actually ended up coming out to the world on accident.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So it was like, I don't know. Well, okay. First of all, I came out to my husband I came out to my best friends first, because obviously, girl gang forever. Have to do the besties first. And then in June, I came out to my husband. And then in November, I came out to my mom. And then on December 30th of 2020, I was making TikTok, and I can't even remember really what the whole context is, but it was something about being attracted to both men and women. And I just posted it, and it was like something that just kind of happened innately to me. And then it was like an hour later where I started getting like messages from a few people. And then I was just like, oh shit. I was like, whatever, let's just rip this Band-Aid off. And so that's when I like posted, this whole thing, and I put it on Twitter, and I was even cheeky about it. I was like, whenever you screenshot this and send it to your friends, make sure they know I said hi. It's just one of those things where it was like this big, scary moment, but also like this moment of like a weight being lifted off of me, and feeling like, hey, this is, a really big part of me that I feel is important to share with the world. And if you're cool with it, then awesome. And if you aren't, then I don't have the energy or space for you in my life. And like, that's that,
Yeah. And I think too, I just, so you have two boys and I have two boys. And I think a lot, I've seen this thing happen recently where, as we are mothering, especially sons of this generation, and we're doing exactly like you said, right? You can love whoever you want to love. You can be whoever you want to be. We're stepping into our authentic selves to model that for them. And I see this so many times in all the mom groups I'm in, of women who are raising their children, especially boys, and they're like, you can love whoever you want to love and all these things, and they're like, oh shit, I actually think I can love whoever I want to love. And it's like, do you feel like you having your sons and your kids are not, they're the same age as mine, right? So
Younger,
you lose let me put it this way. I feel like you lose a bit of your sexuality, right, in those early days of motherhood. You're feeding, you're not sleeping, all these things. Your kids start sleeping better, you slowly start finding your way back to your sexuality, as you're also teaching your kids to live in their authentic selves. And then this culmination of all these things come together. Do you find that becoming a mom and finding, and helping your children through their authentic selves helped you find your authentic self?
That's a really great question. And honestly, maybe it was a small part of it. I mean, my kids at that time were 4 and just under 2. So they were pretty little at that point for me to kind of start having those bigger conversations with them. But it's definitely something that I think, like, after realizing that I really needed to make sure that my kids felt secure in that, And again, like I'm adopted by my grandparents. And you know, for being an older generation, they are very accepting, very loving, you know, people. But at the same time, there were always these like kind of expectations growing up where it's like, you know, you go to school, you don't get in trouble, you get good grades, you don't get knocked up, you don't get arrested, you know, you go to college, you meet someone good for you, you settle down, you get a house, you know, like the whole thing. And I did all of that. You know, I went to college, I did well, I got a master's degree, and then you know, and no, first I got married, then I got the master's degree, and then I had a baby while I was getting my master's degree. And then, you know, it's like, and I've kind of like, I checked all the boxes and I bought a house and, you know, I did all the things. And it's not to say that like my life didn't feel like full and beautiful and amazing, because it really is full, beautiful and amazing. And I mean, obviously we've had those ups and downs as any family does over a course of, you know, 10 years, but it's still like, you know, once you kind of realize who you are in your soul, it makes it a lot easier to give more of yourself to the people that you love. And it really, I mean, I think it just kind of, it helped me really embrace like my personality, like who I am, how I see myself in the world. I feel like I grew more of a backbone after that. You know, it was like this shift in my mindset where it was kind of just like, take it or leave it. This is me. And it was really hurtful because I did have some people that were close to me, family members that, you know, were questioning it, who were, you know, talking about me with other family members and, you know, saying like that they didn't get it. And, you know, that hurt really bad. And, but it's also at the same time, like you can't control what people are going to think about you. And so you can't give your energy away like that, because you only have so much energy to give. And, you know, the people that do love you fully for who you are, those are the people that you need to focus on. And those are the people that you need to give love to also. And, you know, it's fine.
You know, so I was thinking about this because you can come back on to talk about your grandparents, because that I feel like it's its own story, or we can talk about it today. But your mom, Carol, is like a celebrity in Olivia and my mind, right? Like we talk about her a lot in our text threads. And I can imagine that both your grandparents, your parents adored you, however you were, but this comp pet thing really does, I think, prevent you, because like you said, you didn't even know it was an option. It didn't even occur to you that these things could be true. And I think especially when you're probably you know, Beth is a beautiful woman and you're sort of a traditional looking little girl growing up and nobody's really giving you, you know, I think that there are kids that get teased about being gay or something like that. And then it sort of feeds the idea into your head and you think about it. But it can be so easy to move through the world and not question anything about yourself. I did it, right? I was told that these are the things that are about you from the time I was 4 years old. You're pretty, you like babies, you know, you're going to be a great mom, you're going to do these things. And then you grow up and you're like, wait, have I actually thought about those things? And I do feel like there's a little bit of a race. If you know, are you going to get to the point where you start doing those things first, or are you going to get to like 33, 35 when you actually start thinking about those things, right? Because you had the fortunate misfortune of finding your husband and getting married and doing all those things like before you had a chance to even think about them. I mean, and obviously it worked out very well and you have a great husband and great kids and everything like that and the master's degree and all that. But it's so scary to get to that age of 30. I'm at 35 and I'm looking back and I'm like, when I was 25 and desperate to have a baby, I wasn't even really interrogating why I was desperate to have a baby at 25, right? Like those things you're not even really looking at. And and sort of sitting down with a detective's light and being like, why do you want to do this? What do you actually want? What's this all about? And I think that that's a really scary point to get to. And then to, you know, be able to reach the other side and be able to say like, I have these 2 beautiful kids and I have the 3 dogs and the whole life, and you've built a beautiful life for yourself. And then be able to say, and I've interrogated myself and this is my truth and this is the way I want to live. It's a scary thing because so much is forced upon us at that young age of that good girl path. Check the boxes, get the college degree, get the master's degree, find the guy, buy the house, have the baby. And we're supposed to do that and have our shit together by the time we are at that age where we're ready to start looking back and going, wait, what is it that I even want? Who am I? And having the time and the space and the money to sit there for a minute and think about who we are.
Yeah, it's definitely like I said before, it's like this weird flashback moment too, you know, and like, I will say that, you know, I have a extremely supportive husband and mom who, you know, always have my back 110%, when it comes to, you know, me just being myself. But with the flashbacks, it's really weird because you start kind of looking back on your life like this, you know, reel, and you see like, maybe there was some like girls in school that you actually had a crush on, or, you know, like celebrities or like things like from shows, like, you know, Olivia Wilde in the OC. I'm like, that tracks now, you know? So it's like, there's all these like little things that you kind of start picking out of your life and you're like, interesting. And I mean, I think that there's nothing wrong with that though, you know, like you need to have that self-reflection moment, and it still happens. Like I've been out for almost, well, I guess technically like to the world for for 2 years, but to at least like my best friends for almost 3 years, and you know, it still kind of happens.
I think that you can only do it once you get to a certain level of like maturity and adulthood, and your brain works in a certain way. You know, we don't know what we don't know when we're 22. It just like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, I got married, I was 23 years old. I wasn't even 24 yet. And, you know, there are so many advantages and disadvantages to getting married young.
Yeah.
And one of the big things is, you know, I got to start my life with my husband and, you know, have babies early on. I always wanted to be a younger mom so that by the time I was like older and had like better finances, I could like, you know, go live in Europe for 3 months if I wanted to and just say, see ya. But you know, I run a business now, so that's probably not going to happen until I like hire people who can actually manage that for me. But, you know, we got a little ways to go.
I'll be in Scotland, so you can just, it's fine. You can come. Yeah.
But there's a lot of beauty in growing up together. But it's also very difficult. And the thing is like, you have to accept the fact, whether you get married at 23 or 33, that over the course of your marriage, like you are going to change, your partner is going to change, because we're always growing, we're always learning, you know, that's what we're supposed to do as humans. But I think that there's something especially interesting whenever you get married in your early 20s, because you really aren't even fully developed until you're, you know, after 25 or whatever. And then you start to kind of have like, you know, oh, like these are the things that are important to me. This is who I am. I'm going to wear whatever I want to because I don't give a shit. And I'm in my 30s. And if you don't like my overalls, you can, you know, hit the curb. But it's like, I think that, you know, there's the fact that I have someone who has been by my side to support me through all my crazy dreams, like, you know, not dropping out of my master's program pregnant and, you know, launching a whole company with 2 kids under the age of 3. You know, I am not afraid of a challenge. So I'm just like, okay, bring it.
can you talk to us a little bit about what happened in Florida and how you kind of rose up to help people?
Oh, yeah. Let me talk to you about Florida. No, it's for anyone listening who doesn't know where I live, unless you follow me on social, you probably don't. I live in Naples, Florida, which is in Southwest Florida, very close to Fort Myers. And that's where Hurricane Ian had hit in September. And my mom, Carol, who's already been mentioned, who is, just the light of my life, she was in her house on Fort Myers Beach when the storm hit. So when that happened, we were fully prepared. We had never had a storm surge on Fort Myers Beach that bad ever. That house that, I grew up in had gone through, Andrew and Irma and like these Charlie and these big storms. And we just were not expecting, along with everybody else here, that this would happen. And it was even like the day before the storm, I went to my mom's house. I put all the family photos up on the top shelf in the garage. The appliances, I did all of that because we only ever really got a few inches of water in there. And when the storm had actually hit, I was on the phone with her, and that's whenever she's like, the water is coming up the stairs in here. And then the cell towers went down. And that was just like this moment of just like, oh my God, like, oh my God. And, I was very fortunate to still have power at my house. So I'm watching all of this unfold on the news and seeing what's happening on the island that my mom's at, only like, 14 miles away from me. And it was terrifying. And I took to my favorite social media platform. I will stand Twitter until the end of time, even if it's kind of a hot mess right now. That's how I met you guys. So, another reason. But I had just posted, about what was happening. I was kind of posting updates as the storm was rolling in. And when I lost contact with my mom, that tweet like went fully viral. I was getting interview requests from so many different shows that it was insane. I had journalists or, producers like messaging me on my business, contact forms and my personal website contact forms, and calling me and, DMing me on all these different things. Like, and as a publicist, it's so crazy because like, you would think I'd be like, oh, awesome. I'm like, oh, I have like Don Lemon's producer reaching out to me to like chat on the show, or like Kelly Clarkson's interested in talking to me. And I like couldn't do it. I froze. I was like, I have no idea what to do. I felt like catatonic almost. And
well, you were in crisis mode still. I mean, your mom was
missing
still. Yeah, you didn't have contact.
Yeah, it was nuts. And like,
can't go on and talk to Kelly Clarkson about how it was fine. Like that's insane.
Well, that was technically, to be fair to Kelly, that request came after she was back.
Yeah, we love
fair
Kelly.
But I don't know. It was a very, very, very scary, like that rhymed, 24 hours. And I basically was like just trying to find any possible way to get her rescued between like, I contacted like someone who was like in conversations with the National Guard that was employing on Fort Myers Beach. I was in touch with the Coast Guard. I was like calling the Red Cross. I would have called like the White House if I thought I could. I mean, I was like, at this point, I was like, I will do anything and move any mountains to make her okay. And it was kind of like the next day where I woke up and I was still getting these interview requests. And I'm very big on believing in like the energy that you put out into the world is what happens.
Yeah.
Big on affirmations, manifesting, lucky girl syndrome, all those things. And I was like, okay, what are you good at? What's the one thing that you do better than anybody? And I'm like, okay, you're a publicist. You know how to do an interview. You know how to create a story and, get people to connect with other humans through those platforms, you're going to do some interviews. And, I was very selective. I did an interview, with, a few different publications, a few different broadcast networks. And I was like, I had the goal in mind of, if I can get more people knowing who my mom is, what our story is, she adopted me when her son died, I want people to know who she is, who we are together, and put that energy out into the universe that she is going to be okay. And anyone who followed the story then eventually did, learn that my one of my best friends, and along with my husband, rescued her on a boat the following day. And that was probably the scariest moment of my life. It was like the moment that I knew that they were at the house, because I didn't know what they were going to find. I didn't know what they were going to see. And I had people that were like scammers. I had someone texting me, they had gotten a phone number, telling me that they had my mom, but she said that they would pay them back for a hotel that they put her up in. And I was like, okay, well, I truly hope that you eat a French fry that's way too hot and step on a Lego, because that is like so majorly screwed up to do that to someone in a crisis. But it was just like very, very insane and scary, and a lot was happening. But I mean, luckily she was okay. And then after that, I realized that, I was very fortunate. I had a platform that, I had people who were following me because of everything with my mom and the story. And I wanted to try to help people on the beach as much as I could. And so my friends and I decided to start a nonprofit. We worked our tails off trying to get everything, getting supplies together and doing hot food drop-offs and cold water. And, it really looked like a war zone. It was awful. And it's actually very important to also note that like, it's still awful. It is not great here. A lot of the media moved on, obviously, to the next bright and shiny tragedy. But, people here are struggling. We have investors scooping up houses and properties, because insurance companies aren't giving people what they need to stay. And I'm really, apprehensive, maybe is the best word, to see what that does to the culture here.
So, Beth, if somebody is going through a fresh start in their life, a brave decision, whether it's a breakup or coming out or stepping into their truth, what would be some wise words of wisdom that you could impart to them?
That is a great question. Let's see. I love giving unsolicited advice. It's one of my favorite hobbies. So I think that if someone was looking for advice when it comes to those big, brave, and bold decisions that we typically see at Fresh Starts, I would say you need to make sure that you are the happiest, most fulfilled, best version of yourself. And sometimes that means making really big changes and having really big realizations and having to get through the uncomfortable limbo of accepting that, and then doing whatever it is that you need to do to pursue your own joy and to feel fulfilled in your life, because you really only get, so many years on this earth. So you gotta get introspective, and you gotta understand what it is that you want and what it is that you want to be and what mark do you want to leave on the world. And, it always comes back to how you feel. So if you're in a situation where you feel like you can't be your full authentic self, where you're not feeling like your cup is getting filled up, where you're not feeling valued or seen, then you need to make those decisions that are going to benefit the future you in 5 years. That's going to say, wow, I'm so glad that I made that decision, because I would be miserable right now.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then our last question, which is the hardest question for most people. What was the last thing you ate and truly loved?
I basically eat a lot of snacks because I'm constantly working and moving.
And you have 2 kids.
And I have 2 kids. A lot of goldfish. However, the best thing that I ate recently, which is one of my favorite guilty pleasures, I do not come for me for like the red 40, blue 4, whatever, but it is fruit by the foot. It is my favorite little treat to give myself like a little pat on the back. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Being ADHDer, and, like after I complete tasks, I like give myself a little treat where I'm like, okay, have a fruit by the foot. You deserve it.
It just melts on the tongue. So good. Well, Beth, thank you for taking the time and talking to us today and sharing us, with us your vulnerable story and all about stepping into your truth and being authentic, because that is what we're all about here at Fresh Starts. So we appreciate you for everything that you are. And we just adore you, and you know that. And we're so excited to watch as you blow up the world with us or change the world with us. And, on everyone that you touch is so moved by you, and you are truly a light that loves to help shine other people's light. And we're just so thankful that you are in our life. So thank you for being here.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for having me. It was a really, really interesting experience to be on the other side. And I am so thrilled that you thought of me, and I can't wait to see what we do when we take over the world together. Because
Watch out.
Forever.
It's gonna be great.
Thank you for listening to today's story. We're always here, and we're proud of you. Until next time, brave one.
A Fresh Story is brought to you by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to start again. You can read the show notes and learn more about today's episode at freshstartsregistry.com/podcast.